I'll have asked Tori to come up, please.
Okay, sure. Hi. Soil health is being termed as a form of crop insurance for farmers and one of the pillars for sustainable agriculture. Soil health also largely dictates the water quality in any watershed, affecting people's ability to access water for recreation, bathing, and consumption. Today, we're recommending a program that will serve to reduce algae blooms while supporting the agricultural sector to be more resilient in seasons of extreme weather conditions. Phosphorus is, oh no, you're good. Phosphorus is a naturally occurring element in streams and creeks. Thank you.
This will work better for you.
Yeah. However, there becomes a problem if there's too much phosphorus. Excess nutrients contribute to algae blooms and plant overgrowth, increasing bacterial levels and potentially reaching levels of microcystin that can pose a hazard to public health. By preventing soil nutrients, such as phosphorus, from reaching our waterways, this problem is far less likely to occur. If the source problem is left to persist, recovery becomes more difficult. Cover crops can reduce phosphorus loss by up to 99%, according to MOECC phosphorus budgeting tools, which is why conservation authorities are encouraging the incorporation of agriculturally oriented programs. These past 6 months, the SVCA and MVCA have been delivering such a program. Our aim has been to support the agricultural community to implement best management practices for soil conservation via education outreach. We've coordinated 9 workshops, and the uptake has been incredible, starting at 13 attendees and growing to 61. We're gathering practical information from cover crop demonstration plots across the watersheds, and we've begun to develop and deliver soil health educational modules for our students. It's a program that's relatively new, fresh, and unique, and the timing couldn't be better. Of course, this program follows the Conservation Authority's long successful history. Oh, I forgot to go forward a slide. This program follows the Conservation Authority's long successful history of effectively delivering stewardship programs such as Clean Up Rural Beaches and Healthy Futures, of which the County of Bruce funded a large part of. Furthermore, the momentum wouldn't be without its ties into the Great Lakes Agricultural Stewardship Initiative and the Growing Forward 2 program, as well as other programs and partnerships within the Conservation Authority, namely our partnership with Bruce Power to create fish habitat and cattle exclusions. One of the initiatives piloted by the agricultural program this year that saw truly overwhelming public participation was our cover crop incentive program. Using reserve funds, the SVCA offered $10 an acre for landowners to seed a minimum of 2 species of cover crops to overwinter. These grant parameters are commonly used and very successful at creating high public participation and low cost of administration for an incentive that has an incredible impact on soil health and water quality. With just a 2-month application window, we received just shy of 40 grand in applications, about 25 grand more than we had funds to cover. We would like to partner with the county to deliver a similar program next year because we think the cover crop incentive program is really worthwhile, and there's a lot of examples of other programs to support this. 2 close-by examples are the Huron County Clean Water Project and the Wellington County Rural Water Quality Program. Huron County has covered 5,481 acres in cover crops so far this year, and 6,028 acres in 2015, totaling $115,090 put towards cover crops to date. Wellington County has covered 3,653 acres in the last 3 years in cover crops and contributed $312,550 to date. Both counties are able to support the cover cropping of a significant amount of land, keeping all that phosphorus holding soil in place and really making their funding dollars go a long way. Now I'd like to introduce you to Duncan Jewell, who is a business owner in Huron County, sits on the Huron County Clean Water Review Committee, and has observed firsthand the benefit that a program like this provides to a county.
Thank you, Tori. Yes, my name is Duncan Jewell. I'm a member of the Huron County Clean Water Project Review Committee. I've been on the committee since its inception in 2005. I'm a resident of the only non-committee, which is kind of a joke that we have with the committee. I'm retired now, but I do serve on a number of committees and boards in Goderich as a volunteer and as a board member. 2000 F3 tornado in Goderich, I was chair of the Goderich and Area Disaster Relief Committee, which raised $4 million and distributed $6.5 million to residents and farmers and landowners and others, businesses that were affected by the tornado. Part of that funding was through the provincial ODRAP funding, which, as you know, has been drastically changed recently. Just a bit committee. 2 of those members are county councillors and 2 citizen appointees. We started, as I said, in 2005. We had about 150 projects, and we spent about $150,000. We had 6 or 7 categories. In 2016, we now have 18 categories. We're looking at probably over 400 projects this year and over $450,000 in grants. It's to rural, urban landowners, cottagers, citizens groups, special projects, a whole host. As I said, we have 18 different categories. Our county council has provided $3.7 million since the inception of the program. And we have had additional funding from LMAFRA of about $182,000 and from the Huron Farm Environmental Coalition about $7,500. The money that we have paid out over time has probably generated about $10 to $12 million in economic growth in Huron County as a result of the project costs. Our project is administered and supported and delivered by the 2 conservation authorities, Maitland Valley and Oswego Bayfield. And as a committee member, they provide very thorough data and review information to us prior to making a decision, and very good post-project completion evaluations. As a non-profit committee, but interested in the environment, it has been a tremendous learning experience for me. It's a very collaborative model that we use. We get tremendous commitment from landowners to protect and enhance the environment. They, for the most part, have to put in money for some of these projects, although in tree planting, quite often, with the other funding that's available, most of their costs are covered. So lots of times it's their money, but also their labor that is part of their project. 3 projects or 3 areas that we're involved in are not glorious kinds of projects or highlighting kinds of projects, but we have had probably hundreds, if not well over 1,000 decommissioning unused wells and wellhead protection. They're not, as I said, great, glorious projects, but they certainly enhance and protect our drinking water. Manure storage, again, which is an important area to protect the drinking water aquifer. Again, it's not a big project, a big, glorious kind of project that generates a lot of publicity and a lot of people wanting to see it, but it certainly does protect our environment and our water quality. Tori's talking about the program in Bruce County on crop covers. This is our 2nd year in Huron County, and Tori gave you the numbers. We had 91 applications last year, covered about 6,000 acres. This year we have 74 applicants to date, 5,400 acres. We'll probably hit close to 7,000 acres this year. It's a similar program to what's offered now by Tori. It's $10 an acre, a minimum of 2 crops as part of the cover crop program. So The Huron County Clean Water Project is well received by all who have participated. It's well supported by our county council, and I urge you to recommend to your full council and to your budget discussions later on this year and into the 2017 budget, some kind of program to support a clean water project, the cover crops for 2017, and maybe other programs beyond then. Thank you very much for your time.
And now I'd like to introduce you to Ken Schaus, who is a farmer in Bruce County, a 2016 cover crop incentive participant, as well as a valued participant in the Agricultural Outreach Program's Coffee Crops and Donuts series and Demo Plot project.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Schaus, and I'm very happy to be part of this presentation from the Saugeen Valley Conservation. I live in South Bruce on a 300-acre farm with my wife and 2 daughters. I've lived in the area all my life. I was born and raised very close to here. We farm currently 3,000 acres of land from Clifford to Tara, and we also raise cattle. We're probably one of the larger cattle feeders in Ontario, and water quality is a big concern for us. All our farms are tiled, and most have a water course or a creek or a municipal drain that run through them. At Tara, we have a 400-acre farm where the Sauble River cuts right through at Hidden Waters. At Hanover, we have a 140-acre farm along the Beatty Saugeen River. So water quality is a big concern for us, and we're very conscientious on how we approach the water and the land around them. All our 3,000 acres of farms that we are currently farming right today is in a cover crop rotation. This is our 5th year going forward with the cover crop initiative. I guess what got us going with cover crops is I bought a farm off of John McKnight 6 years ago, and it was right along the Coon Creek, cut right through it. We tilled it the way we normally did, worked it and we worked it and we worked it one more time, and then we finally planted it. We had the fertilizer mixed in, we had the chemicals all on, and we got a 4.5 inch rain that night. Went to the farm the next morning, and we saw our topsoil, our seed, all our inputs on about 35 acres had totally disappeared. John McKnight was a retired farmer. He'd farmed that land all his life, and he said, I'm going to tell you one thing, you got to do a better job than that or you're not going to be farming very long. So I said, what would you suggest, John? I said, I feel bad about it. You've taken care of this farm all your life. He had owned it for 70 years. And he said, you got to look at cover crops. You got to look at keeping that soil in its place. So we got active with it right away. We didn't wait, we didn't investigate it. We started that fall. The cover crop programs do several things for us. There's the environmental benefits, but the biggest thing is it changes the way farmers look at their soil. You look at your soil in a different way, not just as dirt, not just as a place where you can get 150 or 200 bushels of corn off, but you look at the soil health, and you look at the water around it, and you look at your tile outlets. I'd never looked at a tile outlet to see what the color of the water was until I actually started becoming aware of what was going on above the ground. For us, soil health is probably the #1 key for building better yields, saving in input costs, and keeping ourselves satisfied that we're doing the right thing. Controlling of runoff is probably one of the biggest savings that we've seen. I mentioned our cattle operation. We're probably one of the largest generators of manure in the province. We keep around 15,000 cattle on feed, so you can imagine the tonnage of manure that's in our system. It's brought us, with the runoff issues, responsible tillage practices, and fertility in manure and chemical placement has become paramount for us. Cover crops are relatively cheap and have big paybacks, and it can be done on a large or small scale. That's my presentation. I feel very proud to be here today, and I thank you.
Thank you, Ken and Duncan, for presenting to council with us today, and I'd like to thank the county council committee members here for listening to us. We know that Bruce County has in the past provided funding dollars to support clean water projects with Healthy Futures, as well as top-up funding to the Environmental Farm Plan, and also funding towards the Priority Watershed to help support the Healthy Lake Huron initiative through supporting funding to Saugeen Conservation, as well as the Pine River Priority Watershed. We know there is an ongoing need and demand for support to the agricultural industry to provide incentives, information to improve water quality. We hope that you can see the value in supporting funding dollars to a Bruce County Clean Water Project for cover crops incentive program using similar models that have been proven to work with existing experienced staff to deliver for the project for 2017. We also know that with a solid program in place, such as this pilot project that we're suggesting, and a commitment from the county, will provide a platform or an opportunity to draw additional funding dollars from other levels of government, both provincial and federal, such as the COA or the Canada-Ontario agreement funding. Again, we thank you for allowing us to be here and look forward to your decision on the proposal to support the cover crop incentive. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. The presentation is very interesting indeed. I'll ask, are you prepared to take any questions from the committee today, if there is any?
Yes, we'll certainly do our best to answer.
Maybe I could start off of a question that I'm sure you can clarify. So you're here with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. So this cover crop program, what funds are eligible? Are you only covering the funds and the lands that's in your area, like in the Saugeen Valley Authority's area, or like what happens up when you're asking for Bruce County dollars?
Sure.
Like what happens up in where Gray Sauble takes over, and on the peninsula where they
so
as not covered. So is this? I guess I'm questioning. Are you kind of going to be able to take care of all of Bruce County?
It's a valid question, and we have thought about that as a pilot project. We would consider looking at Saugeen Conservation and Maitland Conservation areas within the county to start with. We do have the staff to do that, and Doug Hawking also with Maitland has staff time there. We have touched base with Gray Sauble, however, they don't have the stewardship staff available to them, and in terms of their activities in the farming community and outreach, we'd be willing to, perhaps the next year, if it's successful, continue on or entertain further north of the Highway 21 or north of Saugeen Conservation's watershed.
Thank you, Anne.
I love this program. I have always been an admirer of the Huron County Clean Water Program, and you're getting into my passion that I don't have as much time for right now, but as a founding member of the Pine River Watershed and a supporter of the Penetangor, I know how it's invaluable to have the expertise in the stewardship for protecting the Great Lakes. It's all about protecting the Great Lakes, the watershed protection. And I have to thank the Saugeen Valley. They've always were supportive of stewardship initiatives. We couldn't have had the Pine River Watershed without them, or the Penetangor. I'm going into my sermon, Paul. And I always appreciated the way Maitland Valley and Saugeen Valley worked together. When we were starting up the Pine River Watershed, Doug Hawking was a really good resource, and some of the other people from Maitland as well as Saugeen. And there, if you're concerned about it being countywide, like up in Milt's territory, if it goes under Bruce County Stewardship Initiative or whatever you want to call it, you have the expertise. There's the model there from Huron County. There's the model, the Saugeen Valley has been involved, and it could be extended to the whole county. And I mean, in the peninsula, look at all the shoreline you have. And it's about keeping that phosphorus on the land. When I was with Wilf's back a few years here in Kinloss, the algae blooms at the mouth of the Pine were just horrendous. And you don't want to see that anywhere. So if we can do this, I like this because we spend a lot of time planting trees, trying to figure out ways to hold water back on the land, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a relatively cheap way of accomplishing things. You know, we experimented with nitrate filters and what could we do for phosphates in municipal drains, but if you can prevent them from getting there. So I totally support this, and I would like to see Bruce County initiate work with Saugeen Valley and Maitland Valley expertise and Huron County expertise to start with this cover crop program in Bruce County. I totally support it, and I don't have any questions other than the cover crops. I assume they work, as cover crops have always worked from the farming days, but I'll be interested to find out more details if you have any new twists on cover crops.
Thanks, Dan, for your presentation. That,
Orange you, Paul.
Milt, I think, did you have a question?
Yeah, mine is just a question, not a presentation, so you'll be happy. Just up in our part of the country, we do have the Bruce Peninsula Biosphere that are working on water quality and have had a number of projects over the last couple or 3 years and have received a lot of grants, a lot of funding, government funding. And just to question, so government funding for you people, what kind of government funding are you getting presently for this project?
So this year, the 2016 funding that we brought forward specifically for the $10 an acre cover crop incentive was a kind of a stewardship reserve funding that the board allowed me to access for Saugeen Conservation to advertise for that. Tori Waugh's position, she's being funded under the Great Lakes Agricultural Stewardship Initiative, which is Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, and that's also linked to Growing Forward, so that's also Ontario and provincial funding. Doug?
Yes, I would just like to add one thing about our experience in Huron is because we had the structure in place, we were able to attract, as Duncan said, $100,000 from M&R and OMAFRA from their COA funding, which would have easily gone anywhere else in the province and be happily accepted anywhere else, but through administrative procedures too devious to get into here, we were able to mutually achieve some of their goals and our own, and they distributed their money through the structure that we had in place in Huron County. And also, more recently, the Huron County Farm Environmental Coalition is wrapping up, and they had $7,500 left over at the dissolution, and they gave it to us to target it strictly to the cover crops category, because they thought that was such an important thing to do. So we take that as a, 2 thumbs up that we're doing a good job, and the other people are happy to support us for that.
Good, thank you. Yeah, and up there as well, they're also working on soil erosion right now. So, and what percent of the land do you think you're getting now? That what would be your objective if you were to?
Oh, it is really difficult to put a number or a target on. I tend to look at things in the historical perspective. Huron County, for example, is a result of farming and development and everything else that's gone on for 150 years. I think it'd be foolish to say if we get X number in the end of 5 years, we're going to solve all our problems. I think we all have to be in this for the long haul. There's lots of work out there to be done. I don't believe you need to worry about overlapping with other programs. The climate is changing. We're getting 4 spring melts and runoff events now instead of 1 that people used to see historically. We're just barely trying to keep up with the changes and preserve it.
Yeah, I agree with Ken. I mean, a lot of farmers are seeing the benefit to this. Ken? So a lot of them are are becoming involved in
Yeah, what I'm
the
seeing
cover
out
crop? Yeah,
on the cover crops is, once you start, you continue,
Yeah.
with or without funding. So if you can get a new farmer in, or not a new farmer, but a farmer to try it for the first time,
Yeah.
you make the equipment modifications, you make the investments, and you see the paybacks relatively quickly. It's not a 5-year payback, it happens within that year.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yep,
good,
thanks.
thank you.
And just to add there, building the soil health is really what the cover crops helps as well. That the organic matter that they need to grow their crop in is a big asset to what the cover crops can give it as well.
Jay?
We're just going through source water, wellhead protection and all that nice stuff. So is something like this help farmers in the area where they are in a protection zone for protecting a wellhead?
Yes, it would. When they had the early responses, early action program for the source water protection, I don't think there was a category for cover crops because that was now 2013 was the last year that they supported it. But certainly the model of trying to keep the soil in the land and keep the nutrients that are bound to that soil on the land without runoff through wind or water and reaching a water course and being available to the plants to grow is the reason doing the cover crop was trying to have a living crop 365 days a year is the ultimate bang for your buck. So in a source water protection, it's going to reduce that movement of soil to the receiving water courses. And into the ground too, I suppose, in terms of how the plants use their nutrients as they grow.
In addition to what Joanna's just said about what a cover crop could do for farmers in source water protection areas, in Huron County this year we added a new category specifically for farmers that were trying to farm in wellhead protection areas to retire their land in those areas, that 100-meter zone, and offset the costs. And we were going to pay for a period of 3 years to establish some sort of permanent cover there, like trees, which down the road would be commercially viable and generate some income for them on that land down the road.
Well, my main concern is like giving up that farmland that is already there within that space. Does the cover crop program help be able to maintain that land to continue farming it instead of transferring it to trees or like in a lot of cases what I would see is some farmers with present practice would just let it go. They're not doing anything with it, and it's I don't think that's what I would like to see in those areas. So does the cover crop program, does the water protection, source water protection recognize that, or maybe they don't?
Well, we think of it in terms of those are providing additional options for the landowner, things he can do to help protect the requirements for those source water protection zones.
Just an added barrier, if you want to use their language. It just adds another barrier to help reduce the movement of water with nutrients in it.
Joanne, through your slide deck, I guess I am not clear on what your ask is as far as funding for 2017. Are you prepared to, are you coming to that, get back to us on that? What actually is your ask?
We didn't actually, we thought providing a number, we didn't really want to go there. We thought we would show to you what we've done to date and outline that there was at least another $23,000 open to be funded from this year's cover crop incentive program that we piloted. We're willing to handle whatever amount that the county would be willing to offer. 60,000 as an upset limit in terms of our staffing complement and the process itself would certainly be a great start. But again, we didn't want to come with a number. We thought we'd provide you with the information of what we know and how things are working between the other counties, Huron and Wellington. Wellington has a different program in terms of how they set it up, and so we're piloting based on Huron County. So yeah, then we thought we would just provide you with the information, how we've run it so far to date, and that ask is kind of open.
I think one of the things you realize when you get into this environmental field is if you can have money to leverage, because, you know, you can get 10,000 and sometimes you can just use it and all of a sudden you have 60,000 from different pots. You have no idea how many different pots you can go to. And if you're lucky, and win the jackpot, you can leverage a lot of money and you can do a lot more. But sometimes you just have to start at a smaller level, and it gradually expands as the government people get comfortable that you're actually going to make use of it and you're successful and you're getting good buy-in from the community. So there's the leveraging angle. We can bring more government grants in the environmental field into Bruce County. So I think that's important as well.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just have one question, if I may, in relation to the defined pilot project that's being suggested, and using the figure you just quoted, the 60,000, is the thought that 100% of the 60,000 would go directly into the hands of the farmer, or is there a portion of that 60,000 that would go to the administration structure of the Conservation Authority to administer the program?
At this time, it would be towards the cover crops program itself and not to administration or staffing. We have myself, Doug, as well as Tori. Next year, Tori's contract goes to the end of 2017, and again, we'll be looking to continue the program. We see the need in the agricultural community. We see the need that the Conservation Authority work with everyone in the watershed, including the farmers, to show them, to provide them farmer-to-farmer education and how things are working. So at this time, it would be directly to cover crop incentive program.
If I could just ask one follow-up through you, Mr. Chair. Given that, is it fair to do the calculation at the $10 per acre that's quoted?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
Would that be correct, Doug? Yeah.
So if county council, through our budget process, can find $60,000, will the Saugeen Valley Conservation budget also have a number in there that obviously gets shared as well with its member municipalities? Like, I'm just wondering, hopefully we're not looking at a double whammo here at the municipalities.
So just to be clear, the money that we had this year was a one-of. So the $15,000 that I had access to for Tori to begin a project for cover crop incentive was a one-of from our Conservation Authority member municipalities. So there wouldn't be any more general levy added to for the cover crop incentive that we're asking today. Wayne, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I could speak a little bit to that as well, Paul. The funding that we provided this year was obtained really through the Source Water Protection Program. I volunteered, didn't I? Yeah. I volunteered Joanne to help that program out. They had some funding available for the early response program back in 2013, but they needed people to do it, and they were willing to pay. So I volunteered Joanne to spend a couple days a week at that program, and that brought in some extra funding from Source Water, and that's what we used for the cover crops program. So it didn't come out of any municipal reserve or municipal funding at all. It came from Source Water, from the MOECC. So the plan now is we're willing, our staff are willing to put their time into it so that any funding that does come from the county goes 100% into the program, into the farmer, and right in the ground.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we've had a good, an excellent presentation, and you have some things you want to hand out, or is there anything else, Kelly, we question?
Maybe they didn't
Thanks very much for coming. I'm sure we'll, yeah.
I heard 23,000 to 60.
We have some information package we put together, memento members of our attending here this morning.
Okay, I think that's all we require this morning. Thanks again for coming, and I'm sure you'll hear back from us real soon. Is that okay, Kelly? Anything else?
Nope, that's good.
So I think then, is there anything else anyone wants to talk about that delegation, or I guess it'll just go through the process, Kelly? Good to go. We'll move on then to action items. Three action items. The first action item today is Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 157-1154 attached. And Chris, take her away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee may be aware that these applications were discussed probably a couple of years back, and it's in relation to lands within what are termed as the industrial park for Wyerton. Back in the early 1990s, the town of Wyerton, prior to amalgamation, annexed a large chunk of land from the former Amabel Township. And if you're on the southern boundary of Wyerton coming in, is basically the chunk of land within Bruce County, right down past the police station. And those lands were designated as industrial in the back and highway commercial in the front. Some time ago, the municipality sponsored a couple of amendments. One was to redesignate a portion of those lands as industrial to residential, and then secondly, to expand the boundary. And so the boundary expansion is the county plan amendment, official plan amendment number 30, and the requested approval of the local amendment, because we've been delegated by the minister local plan approval, is official plan amendment number 157. Since the application was deferred, and it was deferred pending additional information regarding could this area be serviced, and pending environmental assessments, so on and so forth for the area, looking at sewer, water, and storm water. Since the time of the applications for the town, the situation changed somewhat to the extent that they found that there was a number of issues with the existing infrastructure, and those had to be dealt with in conjunction of the potential for this land as well. In the background, additionally, there's a proposed land purchase by a developer or development group who is in some ways not the proponent of the actual applications, but have an interest in the application. There's been a number of hearings and meetings at the town to try to resolve the issues to the best of everybody's ability. And so what we have today then is a presentation from Jack Van Dorp, and he's going to do a presentation on both amendments. These amendments are maybe, or these reports are maybe a little bit different than some that we've seen. There's a lot of detail in history and so on in terms of how we've gotten here. And so I'm going to ask Jack to come up here and assume this seat, so I don't confuse him as I flip through the maps and so on and so forth.
Thank you. So the county plan amendment is, the question asked in the county's plan amendment here is, should the urban boundary of Wyerton be expanded by approximately 20 hectares or 50 acres to provide additional lands for the development of this adult lifestyle community? And if we go into here a few pages. We can see the area that's proposed. It's essentially on the south, it's not coming up. It's on the southwest end of this proposal. And so it's located along Elm Road to the west of the area that's already in the urban boundary. Documents that we have received in respect of this include a 2008 comprehensive review. We have, as Chris mentioned, various staff reports, correspondence from the town, a master servicing plan completed by the town, and so forth. And as we noted, as Chris noted, we had a public meeting for this application here in 2011. At that time, the recommendation was it was premature in the absence of detailed servicing information. Since then, the town has undertaken a master servicing plan for the Wyerton settlement area, and that plan identified off-site water and sewer infrastructure requirements for new development in the town, including potential for a 1,500-unit retirement settlement area at the south end of Wyerton. The plan identified this area as requiring on-site stormwater management, and from a preliminary perspective indicated that stormwater management facilities would be located within the existing urban boundary. The town has also recently completed an expansion to the capacity of its Wyerton wastewater treatment facility to improve treatment of wastewater and additional growth. So the town has been working to address some of the questions that were the cause of the deferral back in 2011. The town has also completed a development charges study, which is based on the master servicing plan, and we noted in this report that they were going to consider that bylaw on September 6th. They did consider it and they have adopted it. We have been in contact with the town to express some concerns regarding the structure and the financing mechanisms that were outlined in that bylaw relative to the rates of actual development that may be expected in the town. So the only rationale that has been advanced in respect of increasing the boundary area or adding these lands to the Wyerton urban boundary is the statement in the comprehensive review document that the lands may be required for stormwater management. The studies completed by the town have not addressed this rationale. As we've seen in the master servicing plan, the master servicing plan in terms of stormwater for this area says it'll be dealt with on site, and the conceptual location is at the lowest point on the property, which is within the urban boundary. The proponent of the development has not supplied any additional information in respect of stormwater management functions or preliminary plans for the property that would require these lands that are to be added to the urban boundary. And so as such, there does not appear to be any specific land use planning rationale for including the lands in the urban area. The principal cost of their inclusion in the urban area to the town is that it may be difficult for the town to rationalize urban boundary expansions in other areas should they prove more feasible, timely, or competitive to develop. In looking at this, we do have to consider the PPS, and we had received some assistance from the province in terms of comments on the proposal, and they had noted requirements in respect of MDS, and that's minimum distance separation. And minimum distance separation is required to be met now in the 2014 PPS for boundary expansions. We noted that there is a livestock facility that does not meet the MDS setbacks. However, that livestock facility is already constrained by the existing urban boundary, and should you wish to approve this amendment, the town amendment which corresponds to it, the town amendment would place it in the rural designation. So we don't believe that MDS is actually an issue in this proposal. And the PPS is also interested in making sure that if you're going to designate lands for development by including them in an urban area, that you be able to service them. And we noted that the town's water and sewer infrastructure is constrained by a fair bit of inflow and infiltration that's in the existing serviced area. If these issues can be overcome, essentially it's would there be enough units in a short enough period of time to pay for all of the infrastructure that's required. We have had some comments from agencies in the public since our 2011 report, which is attached. George and Bluffs notes that studies have not been submitted to justify components of the amendments, including the settlement area expansion. Sparling's Propane has also submitted comments that the amendments are premature and without sufficient. We had previously provided a report to the committee that said that the application was premature. The approach adds lands to the urban boundary for which there is no rationale, save their potential to assist in stormwater management without documentation or demonstration that these lands can or will fulfill that function. This is on, where am I in here? but provides no documentation or demonstration that the lands can or will fulfill that function. So the expansion is likely premature without confidence that sufficient resources are available to proceed with the servicing strategy and implement its recommendations. As we said, there has been a master servicing study. It identifies the infrastructure to the boundary of the subject lands. It does not deal with infrastructure within the subject lands. The servicing plan notes stormwater facilities within the existing urban boundary. And beyond this, there's no information about servicing for the lands, including this settlement area boundary or stormwater management within them. The local plan designates the lands as rural, the local plan proposes to add them to the urban boundary and then designate them rural, and we'll deal with that in the next report, which is on this agenda. And this is perhaps an interesting or a different type of application. Typically, when we're dealing with applications, there's a risk of appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board. Staff have provided a recommendation that this application be refused, and should the committee decide to refuse the application, there is no right of appeal in respect of a refusal or failure to adopt an amendment to approve or to alter any or all or any part of a boundary for a settlement area. So it's a bit different, and the reason for that is to provide municipalities or approval authorities with good control over the limits of their settlement area boundaries. Should you wish to approve it, then there would be a right of appeal associated with that approval, but there is no right of appeal of a decision to refuse the application. I'm pleased to take any questions if there are any from the committee.
Ann?
So you talk about the risk of appeal, and I'm not as familiar with that. That's my first question. Who would be appealing this if we passed it? Like, who's opposed to a lifestyle community, or might it be the Conservation Authority that would appeal it, or M&R or somebody because of there's not enough documentation, or that's just what I was wondering.
There has been some correspondence from property owners in the vicinity or within other property owners within this 20-hectare area. It could be the municipality of Georgian Bluffs or Sparlings Propane, any of those organizations that have submitted comments or participated in the process to date would have the right to appeal a decision.
Sorry, I just have a follow-up to the infiltration problem. Like, to overcome that, like, we've been dealing with that in the municipality of Kincardine for years, and it cost us a fortune at Huron Ridge to deal with the infiltration problem there, and we have others. Like, is it a huge problem to overcome for them? Is that what a study needs to be done relating to infiltration and their capacity? Like requiring, I'm just curious.
So it's a large problem with inflow and infiltration in the Wyerton settlement area, and the town has been working to address that. It means that in major storm events, there's massive volumes going through the lagoon system, and the pipes are in some cases overwhelmed. This development does propose to sort of bypass that existing infrastructure, so it in and of itself would not be a contributing factor to inflow and infiltration. It wouldn't be using those pipes, but at the present time, the lagoon capacity is somewhat constrained by those issues. So the town is actively working on solutions to them at this time.
So the new one doesn't contribute any more infiltration. The problem is adding to their system. Because of their infiltration, they don't have the capacity, or it'll be close to capacity then, in major events.
That's correct, and as I say, they are actively working to address that.
You're going to push that button? Go ahead. Okay.
this is maybe why Janice wanted me to come today, I don't know. It has been an ongoing issue. Speaking just on behalf of the town, we're stagnant without growth, and we realize we need growth. So I think if this application had to come forward in the beginning and totally cleaned out everything as far as the development and everything, and the town had have just applied to redesignate lands for residential instead of industrial and commercial properties, which is in behind the road, the main road coming into Wyerton. In behind those properties, I don't know if you know where Wyerton, like there's Bruff and Witcher, there's the police station, there's kind of industrial, commercial uses. This development is in behind all that. Those lands are mainly rural and industrial uses. So we, as a council, kind of said, we aren't the 401. What kind of industry is going to be coming to Wyerton? Is our future in development residential? And we feel that it is. Our sewage lagoon was pretty well to capacity on these 2 or 3 events a year that would happen because of the infiltration, and our whole main street, all the rooftops are hooked to the sewer system, which was the way things were done. And probably all small towns are dealing with this issue, and we do have the influx of people's basements being pumped into the sewage system. And so we're dealing with it. It's a long-term thing. We have applied and received, we had the grant for the Sauble sewage system a few years ago. We've transferred that back to the Wyerton system, and the province was gracious to us, allow us to use those funds. And we have oversized the lagoon for an expansion to the 900 to 1,500 homes. So we're in that process. It's done. The sewage lagoon isn't completely done, but it is in the process. We've been working the last year to have it done. So this development is on the south of town where there is no water and sewer. We have to run a main trunk line, and we have another report coming back here, our next council meeting, on exactly how we're doing it. Our study that we did shows us how we did it, and that's how we come up with our development charges. Is there other ways of doing things? There's always other ways of doing things. So we're looking at development charges as an ongoing live procedure. As you find new ways of doing things or less expensive ways, your development charges are going to either go up or down, and all the way through. So we've passed what the studies have told us it's going to be. They back up all the information. The biggest problem that I see is the development going to come? I hope it's going to come. And I can understand where Jack's coming from, mainly on stormwater management on the property. It's simply a paragraph that it'll be handled on the property. I guess, does that come when you do site plan approvals? And is the town still in the driver's seat when we come to approving site plans and dollars that need to be put up? And in a lot of cases, we are. We're thinking we're protected. I'm hoping we're protected. But it's a difficult situation. The town took on this task. It was a former council about 3 councils ago that said we're going to have this development. Did they do it properly back then? I don't know, but in their wisdom, they did. We've been trying to deal with it all the way through, and I'm hoping we can still move forward. I don't know how the county feels. Our main opposition is outside of the county of Bruce and outside of South Bruce Peninsula. It's Georgian Bluffs. It's a propane facility that was allowed to be built right on the edge of the highway as you're coming into Wyerton, and is, you know, because of the instance in Toronto when the propane facility blew up, now their boundaries have expanded, and I can understand their concern. We're looking at it, do they have to mitigate their situation if we start building houses, or can they control the top half of Wyerton from no development because the propane facility's there? So I don't know where that's going to go, and they're saying they don't want to have to spend more money building big cement walls and mitigating their blast zone. The Georgian Bluffs wants just to leave the land zone the way they are, and they want us to match on the other side of the road. We don't know where to go. It's frustrating. All I know is we got to grow, and we've spent quite a bit of money on our sewage lagoon. Is this still premature? It may be. Maybe instead of complete refusal, maybe we still need more information for the county. If it's in the form of stormwater management, maybe we can get the developer to show us a little bit more what's going on the property. So I don't know what to do. You hopefully have more wisdom than I do.
Just for clarification, and some of the points that Jay made are very important. And maybe Jacob, you could maybe help me out here a little. I'm struggling myself with this, because the next item on the agenda also deals with this matter, and I think it touches more on the propane thing. Can you clarify, like, how do we make a decision to approve your recommendation or not your recommendation without kind of getting into the second part at the same time? I need a little help with that.
Okay.
Mike.
If I may, there's nothing that would say, as a matter of procedure, that we need to, there is a proposed resolution within Jack's report. There's nothing to prohibit us. I think we've considered this and provided the information, and there's nothing to prohibit us from moving on now to do a review of the second report. And so therefore you can see how the local amendment fits in or dovetails with the proposed county amendment. And so if the chair would be comfortable with that, I would ask Jack to give a review of the second report, which is the local plan amendment.
Mike had a question there. What do you want to do, Mike?
I'm not too sure what I want to do today. No, my question really is your comments around the development charges. Development charges, in my mind, are something that local councils put in place about deciding how they're going to finance things, and I wonder how they get taken into this, because it's always a saw-off, and it's up to the council to decide what they do that. And you're saying you've got some concerns in structures. There's probably been some good background studies that led to I know you will do that. And then council make a decision, and I wonder, so I guess I'm uncomfortable with us questioning a lower tier's decision on how they're going to finance infrastructure and then using it in a planning report. There's always trade-offs here. There will be invariably there's developers involved and towns negotiate those things, but those decisions are rightly with the lower tier in my mind.
So, how does the committee feel? Should we just hold off on making a recommendation or decision on this first item and move in and hear the report on the second item, and then I guess we'll come back to the first item? I also, there's a gentleman here with his hand up. Is this a public meeting where we're allowing public input in today's proceedings? What are you suggesting then?
I'll defer first.
Thank you. That's an important point of procedure. I think we've had a number of members of the public and so on asking us if delegations could be made and so on, and our response to that is generally no. And the reason for that is that the Planning Act outlines the requirements, and as has been alluded to here, it's up to the local municipality to hold the public meeting regarding the local plan amendment, and that moves forward to the approval authority. Additionally, Bruce County has already held the public meeting regarding the county plan amendment. And it's my perspective that after a 2-year period that the issues associated with this proposal have been properly canvassed and are properly summarized within the report. I feel further that to open it up for delegations at this point in time, in the absence of other people who would have liked to have appeared to make delegations and so on, somewhat prejudices the nature of the meeting today. From a procedural perspective, and Kelly may be able to help me out here too, as the delegations are not on the agenda, it would require an amendment to the agenda with a vote to allow to amend the agenda to have the delegation added.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. If committee members wish to allow the member to speak, it is by way of resolution, and then they can speak to the committee members.
I think I'm beginning to see why Dave's away today as well. We're going to move on to the second item, and then we'll come back. And sir, if you still want to ask a question or make a comment, I'm going to ask committee if that's okay, and we'll go from there. So Jacob or
Do we need a resolution to defer before we can move on, or we're okay to just move on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you're fully capable of moving on, but when you come back to it, if the committee wish to defer it, then they have that authority to defer the application.
the first one, yep. So let's go on and hear the presentation for the second part of it.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. So as we noted, this is a local official plan amendment, and this is an amendment which proposes to redesignate lands in this south part of the Wyerton settlement area, and I'll just do my little box around it here. So it's this portion of the settlement area from the industrial and highway commercial designations to a residential and a village center designation. And the purpose of this is to facilitate development of an adult lifestyle residential community. The village center designation includes commercial uses such as restaurant, accommodations, medical, financial, entertainment uses. Does not include single-use alcohol sales establishments. It would also permit multifamily residential, assisted living accommodations, professional and personal service uses, institutional uses, community facilities, and open space. And then, as we just discussed, the amendment also adds about 20 hectares to the settlement area boundary and places those lands in a rural designation. The application, as Chris noted, is a town-sponsored application, and the reason for that is the application is proposing conversion of lands from employment uses to another use, such as residential. And so the town commissioned a comprehensive review which found that there is a surplus of highway commercial and industrial lands based on the town's anticipated needs, and also found that there is some demand for additional residential lands. And the comprehensive review did not really go into the policies surrounding the village core. That was beyond the scope of that review. As the approval authority for this, the committee has the ability to approve the amendment, to modify and approve the amendment, or to refuse the amendment. And this is one where we've identified all three of those options for you with some considerations. I'm just going to jump to a different page in this. There's a number of these reports, and so I wanted to speak to the page. Is there a way to get the page number showing? Okay. So in our report to the town of South Bruce Peninsula, there was a few things that we identified that I'd just like to run through briefly. One of them, as Member Kirkland identified, is a propane facility to the east, as well as an industrial facility to the southeast. And we'd prepared a number of comments, or during the course of this application review, it came to light that there's a hazard facility associated with a propane facility that's located on the east side of Highway 6 in the township of Georgian Bluffs. Staff recommended that staff prepared an amendment version, which is actually attached to this report, which suggested that the influence area of this propane facility just remain in the highway commercial and industrial designation. And that would deal with both setbacks to an existing industrial use and that use, and leave lands in the highway commercial, for highway commercial and industrial uses, which is consistent with the function of that area. Through further discussions with that, Sparling's Propane was happy with that approach. The township of Georgian Bluffs see less issue with that approach. The proponents were not so keen on that approach. They're interested in this village center, and so a solution that was identified, which is the solution that was adopted by the town, was to reorient the village center so that it's totally outside of the industrial area, or out of the industrial influence area, still within the Sparling's propane hazard distance, but a little bit, towards the outer edge of it. And if we go to that, you can see how that looks on a map. Essentially, so this is one version saying basically this is the area, this is the industrial uses sort of sensitive area, influence area, and this is the hazard distance for the propane facility. So in some respects, the simplest solution would be to leave that highway commercial and industrial, make this area residential, and carry on. An alternative that was developed was to reorient this village center designation outside, leave this highway commercial or this industrial sensitive use area in the industrial designation, have the village center here, and then have the residential areas further out. In terms of this propane facility, there's a question, and it creates some uncertainty, and it's caused a great deal of review and discussion. What are the responsibilities of the town to an existing propane facility in another jurisdiction in respect of its hazard area? And so from reviewing all of the policies and understandings, the process that is required for this is that the town notify the propane facility of the proposed change in land use designations, in this case from industrial and highway commercial to village center and its associated uses. And then the propane facility can then modify its risk safety management plan to deal with those proposed uses. So they may need to amend their operations on the site, may need to add additional features to the site to deal with the risk that's associated with the change in uses within its influence area. And if it's unsuccessful, if it's unable to do that to the satisfaction of the authorities that have to approve that risk safety management plan, then it has to relocate its facility. So that's the process as we understand it that's been outlined. Obviously, they don't like that. They'd rather not change their facility, their plans, or relocate. And so they have objected to this proposal and to the proposed, for anything within their propane hazard distance. And they've suggested it would be perhaps appropriate to consider, 1,000-meter separation to allow them the possibility to expand in the future. So that's the basic nature of the correspondence that we've attached to you there, or to these reports from the propane facilities. In the discussions with the adult lifestyle community, their interest in having this village center facility sort of in this area is related to, I think, the topography of the lands being somewhat more level at the top, as well as having some proximity to the highway to, better deal with the attractiveness of the village core, its easy access for their customers and so forth. And so that's sort of the two perspectives that are going on there. Staff has some concerns that they've expressed consistently with respect to the function of the village center and its relationship to other commercial areas within the town. This has to do with, so we haven't really received information to address the concerns about locating a use or a cluster of uses that is very close in its resemblance to the types of uses you find in the downtown. the size of the unit, commercial units and other such things within that cluster of uses in such close proximity to the downtown, given the market area. And so in the discussions with the proponents, we've identified some requirements for market studies, some discussion of the range of uses that might be permitted, and those are all included in that amendment, and those are intended to mitigate risks to some extent based on the overall unknown quantity that we have, or the unknown circumstances of approving effectively a village core or a downtown for this development close to the existing downtown. So when we come to looking at this amendment, it's a proposal to redesignate surplus employment lands from highway commercial and industrial uses to residential uses. That's the essential request that the town initiated, and that's the question that was covered by the comprehensive review. Is there surplus employment lands? Do we need more residential lands? If so, maybe it makes sense to undertake that amendment. The private development interest in the property has generated a range of policies related to a proposed village core and some efforts that staff have undertaken through discussion with that developer, which have been adopted by the town as a way to permit that village core. And related to that village core, again, is this question of the propane facility and whether the town or county in this case would feel that there's some responsibility to that facility, and whether it's good to introduce potentially sensitive uses in the vicinity of that existing use. The alternatives that we've identified, which are consistent with the ability of the committee, are to refuse the amendment. The benefits of that would be it controls financial risks associated with servicing. Mayor Smith has identified that perhaps that's not a question for the county. The locals have debated and discussed that issue at great length and made a decision in respect of a development charges bylaw for that. The costs of refusing the amendment would be a potential loss of development. Servicing issues remain if there's other uses proposed for the area, and capital investment in the town sewage lagoon would go underutilized. I'm just going to try find, I'm reading off paper and I'm realizing it would be better to have this up here. So we've dealt with that's do nothing in this context. It was for the town to withdraw its amendment. For you, it's to refuse it. And we're not recommending that you consider that option. Option B is adopt an amendment which redesignates lands from highway commercial and industrial to residential. And that's based on the findings of the comprehensive review commissioned by the town. This is an option that was presented to council in 2013, involves designating the majority of the site residential. The question of whether rural land should be added is the other question we're discussing today. This option requires no amendments to the text of the plan. The benefits that were noted for this approach, the town can demonstrate a commitment to residential uses in the area by redesignating employment lands based on the findings of the comprehensive review. It places the responsibility for demonstrating the merits of the specific proposal on the proponent. It assigns residential lands to an area proposed to be serviced through a pump station, and so there's been some changes since then, but generally consistent with the master servicing strategy and sewage lagoon expansion, maintains the highway commercial and industrial designation for highway commercial and industrial uses, and has no conflict with existing or planned uses, including the propane storage facility and other industrial uses. Costs of this approach, it's not supported by proponents of the adult lifestyle community, who have the option to purchase vacant lands that are subject of this amendment. And it has the potential, the boundary expansion we talked about, the adjacent livestock facility. Option C is the amendment that was adopted by the town. and that would be an amendment to which the proponents of the adult lifestyle community agree. There are some concerns with that. Sparling's propane outstanding objections with the risk of appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board. There's concern with introducing another category or function of commercial activity that mirrors the downtown a short distance away. And we've already talked about the livestock facility. So those are sort of the points, key points of the three options that we prepared. Provided these to the town. They've adopted one of the three, and it's been forwarded to you for your consideration.
Ann?
Okay, I'm trying to get my head around all this. And I must admit, I read it last night, so I maybe didn't take in everything that I should have. But I'm just a bit confused on the idea of two commercial areas, because I remember years ago in Kincardine, when the bypass went through, that was the big fear, what would happen to downtown Kincardine, because, you know, if it got developed out in the bypass. But what we've really found is the two areas complement each other. We have more of our folksy little shops and everything downtown, and you know, we've got the big grocery store and Canadian Tire and things out on the highway. So I see that argument just from being through that experience in Kincardine, and they're relatively close. You know, you just go down Russell or down Durham, and then we've kind of got another area at the north part of town that's where we have the drugstore and whatever. So I don't see that. I think those areas can complement each other. So what was your reasoning? Because I've seen how it works, and it can work. Did you have another concern about it?
Through the chair, the area is already designated for highway, commercial, and industrial uses, which are probably consistent with the uses that you find out on the bypass in the Kincardine area. The concern is with the proposed designation to a village core that you would see the development of the same types of uses as you have in the downtown. So they would be perhaps competing directly as opposed to complementing each other. So the existing plan function of that area is for the larger scale highway commercial uses and activities, and then with the downtown being more the smaller footprint stores, and the proposed village center is the smaller footprint store and that range of uses that you typically find in a downtown.
I'm kind of a believer that competition is always good, and that people find different niches to operate in, and I've seen that happen. I also I think development is good, as you've got both the residential in that. I'd like to find a way to support it if we could, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, what is best.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we go back to the first item on the amendment. But before we do that, sir, do you still wish to make a comment or address council, or have you? I do, sir. Okay. So, Kelly, you're saying I need a motion to amend the agenda to allow this gentleman to present his delegation to us? Is that about the process, Kelly or Chris?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. We just need to read into the motion the gentleman's name and seek approval to allow him to speak.
John Dent? Okay, I'll just go with John. The rest will figure out the last name. So, was anybody prepared to make that motion and let John speak today? Moved by Ann. We have a seconder by Bob. Any discussion on that motion? Go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, I do have a bit of a problem with it, in the fact that it's somewhat prejudiced with regards to other people not aware of the opportunity. And so it's not quite fair, I don't think, to the overall application.
Okay, good
That's
point.
Just my...
Any other comments before I call for the vote on the motion? Those in favor of the motion? Let's have the hands up. Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? I'm sorry, sir, you're not going to get an opportunity to speak today to this matter. Motion's lost. Let's go back to the first amendment then. So we have a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment just on that motion?
No, I'm sorry, sir.
It's really a deprivation of my rights here because the original hearing was deferred to this time for me to have my opportunity to speak.
I'm kind of losing control there. Mike, can you help me? What's your thought now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would recommend the committee continue with the balance of the meeting, and the suggestion and comment that was made from the gallery is not representative in our records.
Very good, thank you. So we're back to the recommendation. The Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be refused in the following reasons: that there's no land use planning rationale for the addition of the lands to the Wyerton settlement area. Now, I believe we should, if we're going to discuss that at all, we should have a mover and a seconder first. Do we have a mover for that recommendation? No mover for the recommendation. The recommendation's lost. So would that mean, in fact, then, that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved? Or we need a motion to that effect?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my recommendation is that someone or two people move and second it to get it on the floor, and then take the vote for, just for clarity, and then, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'll move it.
You're going to move refusal. You're a good man. So I have a mover to the recommendation, the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be refused for the following reasons: that no land use planning rationale for additional lands in the Wyerton settlement area. It's been moved by Mr. Kirkland. Do I have a seconder? Second by Ann. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? The motion's lost. So which would mean then perhaps that we'd ask for another recommendation. Do we carry on here, Kelly, to look for the amendment to be approved, or is that just the end of it for today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is up to committee. If they wish to take the next step, they're certainly free to do that.
Milt?
Just wondering if we can hear from the rep from South Bruce Peninsula. What?
Go ahead.
Well, there's two other recommendations on the second report we heard today, and the planners were leaning toward, I don't know if I have the options right, option 2. South Bruce Peninsula had requested option 3. So the first option was refusal, second was what the county was proposing, and then the third was what South Bruce Peninsula had proposed. So can we have the planner read those two options again and try to make sure we got our head around the difference of the two options before we go any farther? Is that
We're on the wrong.
Yeah, I know it's the second part of that's what's kind of frustrating, is it's the second part of so if this has been refused as far as deferral, can we move on to the second part where the other recommendations are made? I'm just not sure of the process.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks. I think we're kind of in gray area here and procedurally. I really, to speak to the amendment and then maybe a way out, I think there's some willingness here. I think all of us would like to see something like the development like this occur. There's no question. There is some issues that we are outstanding, and to really just say no to the idea, I have trouble with that. Because I think, like Jay, I think we're all looking for development, and I just wonder maybe a deferral until there's some of these issues can be addressed and brought back would be more appropriate. And, it's just a suggestion out of this, because there's no question there's some planning issues around it, and I absolutely agree, but I don't think they're insurmountable, and perhaps a deferral instead of an outright refusal would be better. And I guess we haven't refused it, and I guess we turned that motion down. So I'm talking in circles here a bit.
So the first item, still up in the air is how we want to handle it. So I agree that we could have a motion just to defer it or to approve it. I think that's the two options. Chris?
At this point, if I could provide some advice simply on procedure, is that the amendment has been around for quite some time and under deferral. And since that time, the community and staff of the municipality and the proponent and our staff have spent quite a bit of time and effort trying to see whether or not there's some resolution. And it's at the point, from a process perspective, I feel very strongly that it's time for the amendment to move through the statutory process. And I think that with regard to the county amendment, what we're dealing with here is simply the case of amending the boundary to bring these lands into the urban area. And the purpose of that is that at the time we were dealing with the expansion, there was a proponent associated with this who indicated that these lands were needed for this adult lifestyle community. And so it's as simple as that. At the time, the thinking was, okay, well, these lands are potentially needed for stormwater management. It turns out this is not the case. There's not a sufficient rationale to provide a case for bringing the lands in. So that one is fairly straightforward. And I think at this point, given, I feel that the report has given a comprehensive look at the issues associated with this proposal. And I feel that in terms of trying to negotiate a solution to the development, we've taken it as far as we could. And I would simply, and not that we're opposed in any way to having it deferred and trying to find a further resolution. I don't want to be misunderstood on that, but I feel on the basis of the review and the information in the report, we know enough now at this point to make a recommendation of approval or refusal. I think at this point in time, and Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, on the county amendment, there was a proposed staff resolution for refusal, and there's no take up on that, and then potentially, as Kelly would say, a mover and seconder for either a deferral or approval of the boundary expansion.
Can I have would anyone consider making a motion that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved?
Can I just one more question before that?
Are you moving that?
No, one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Does that mean go ahead?
I mean, it's approved if you...
No, I said I had one more question.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I'm not trying to confuse you any further. Sorry. It comes down to probably about two main issues. Sparling's propane. Is it going to end up going beyond to an OMB hearing? That's up to Sparling's propane. And as planner has said, the issue of the stormwater management, the lands didn't need to be held for stormwater management. In the area of that, Wyerton, around Wyerton is a lot of low land. This is one of the areas that can be developed, and I believe stormwater management can be dealt with on the property. So then it comes to the issue of the farm operation. I don't believe that's an issue, but the main issue is the propane facility, and upon us approving anything going there, I think it's going to go beyond whatever our decision is anyways. That's inevitable. So deferral, I don't know if there's any more information that could come back other than, well, I don't know what other information that can come back to this committee, so.
If we can isolate, my recommendation for the committee at this point is to isolate the county plan amendment and a resolution on the county plan amendment. And so 157 is dealing with the boundary expansion only.
Right. So I'm not so sure I have a motion, a mover for a seconder anyways, to take the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved. Is there a mover for that motion? I'll move for that motion.
Sorry, Paul, what did you say? No, we're confused. So, now you don't need, so you don't need the lands for stormwater management, right? You said.
Yeah, I don't believe so in the future. I think that it's been shown that the stormwater management can be controlled on the property because of the size of the property.
So, then the addition of the lands is for the project to go ahead. You need that to go ahead.
Yes, and I, just to clarify, the 157, I think it is.
Yes.
And one question to the planner is, does that take out the commercial core and just go with residential designation, or does 157 still include the commercial core? The developer wants the commercial core portion within that area, and that's going to be, then from commercial, you still need setbacks to residential. So that's where the whole thing's been having hard to fit in. If we are redesignating the lands just to residential, or does 157 still allow for the commercial designation? So that's where I need clarification.
So I'm going to say this, 157 takes the lands from the county plan area, which is rural, and it places it within the town boundary and designates it as rural within the town boundary, correct? And so the town of Wyerton has an urban boundary that also has lands that are not, they're not really designated for anything in the back and behind the school and so on and so forth. So you do have a rural designation within the town of Wyerton. And it could be said, if there is ever some sort of a plan prepared for this property that shows conceptually how this would lay out for stormwater or for a town center or for a land lease community, that potentially those lands may or may not be needed. At this point in time, the amendment, it's a boundary expansion proposed by the town. Nothing that we have seen, and when we originally reviewed it and there was a recommendation for deferral, it was, the discussion at the time was whether it should be included for stormwater management purposes. Additionally, since that time then, there's been some work done by the municipality in that area, and the question that I would put to the town is there a need for a comprehensive stormwater management plan for the entire area that includes the whole block as a neighborhood plan? And the answer to that was no. We're not going to do that. Each individual property would take care of its own, somebody take care of its own stormwater. But at this point in time, I can't rationalize the town would expand its boundary based on conceptually that it may or may not be needed by a given development sometime down the road without having any knowledge or plans or drawings to indicate that that would be required for stormwater at this time. It sounds sort of silly to talk about the importance of a boundary expansion, but it's kind of that you go through this process. You're not supposed to expand your boundaries according to the province unless you can show a need. And so you look at population projections, and you look at the ability to infill within your urban area, and you look at your ability to service those lands with sewer and water. Is it reasonable or affordable that you could service those lands once you expand them? And what's happened over the 2-year period is that yes, potentially we can service these areas with sewer and water. No to the stormwater. Development charges says yes, potentially these can be serviced at whatever cost there may be. But OPA 167 is simpler than all of that. It's to increase the size of the boundary to allow for more development. And the reason the planners don't normally say, well, no harm, no fuss, is because they're kind of hard to get and they're hard to rationalize in a slow population growth type scenario. And so what we look at then is, well, let's not do that one at this point. There's no proven rationale for it. At some point in the future, there could be another development in another area where there could be a proposed boundary expansion, and we would look at that. This started out as an exercise in terms of we have a large amount of industrial land within the urban area in Wyerton. Can some of it at the south end of that be redesignated to residential? And the answer is yes. It doesn't seem to be a problem associated with that. But then the development has impacts in the industrial park. The industrial park is not growing. It could be argued because it didn't have sewer and water. And on top of that, the proposal is colored by an individual development proposal that has a village center, which is a cluster, that has a number of different uses, including retirement building, retail, and so on and so forth. And it's not that it's a competition argument, is that those lands are already designated, the same as in Kincardine, to allow for exactly what was brought up at this table, for space-extensive uses that can't fit in the downtown. And so in some ways, then, you have an industrial use, and it's right, in this case, it's right across the street, but it could have been within the industrial park, and other industrial uses within that area that potentially conflict with the concept of the village center at that end of it. So going back to this amendment, it's really just to bring those lands within the settlement area, and the planner is saying on the basis there doesn't seem to be a rationale to bring it in.
Sorry, Paul. So this whole retirement thing can go ahead anyway without being, they don't need the lands?
I don't know to what extent. I haven't, in terms of the information provided by the developer, and Councillor Kirkland can correct me if I'm wrong, because he's been involved in those decisions at the council table. I don't know whether that's the case or not. It's simply that nothing I've seen at this point over the 2-year period would lead me down the road to approval that the town would expand its urban boundary to accommodate it.
Chris has answered my question with regards to information. And there again, I look to Jay, because has there been enough information for council to make a decision, Jay, do you think? Or?
Well, 90% of the lands are zoned in commercial industrial highway. We as a council have looked at, that is not probably the growth area for Wyerton. The growth area would be residential, and in pre-planning for the next 20 years, we feel residential growth is our growth area, and mainly through the seniors population. And do we get prepared for that for the next 20 years, or do we sit back and do nothing? And if it does come, they're going elsewhere because we can't allow the development. So we are out on a limb as far as South Bruce Peninsula is concerned in our sewage lagoon, the dollars that we've spent on it for the capacity. We are going out on a limb to spend some money for the future. And it is a confusing process. And yes, we haven't seen the plans that probably typical developers would give towns for approvals for matters of this importance, but it has been political all the way through. And so far, we've been trying to move forward, and we've spent some major money to be where we're at. And whether this development goes through or not, we want development in Wyerton. And if another developer comes next year, if this development isn't the development and another development comes next year, if you're not ready, we're into another 6 or 8 year process to try to develop. And so what point do you sit back and do nothing? And
sounds to me you should approve it.
Well, in my opinion, yes, and I think we're more or less protected on when they bring the site plans forward, and to sit down with our staff on doing site plans and what's it going to look like, what dollars are going to have to come up before we spend any money on their infrastructure and pumping stations and stuff for this development to happen. The development might not go. Based on the information I've seen so far, I don't know if it's going to go. But if it is going to go, we're ready. We've spent the money, or a lot of dollars and cents to be ready. Maybe it isn't this development that happens down the road and the developer goes away, but we've got lands now designated residential. Maybe another developer will realize that we can go, and maybe it's going to work. But it's frustrating that I didn't go to school for proper planning and all these issues. And yes, there is people that don't like your decisions because it affects their businesses in other municipalities. But do they have the right to control the fate of South Bruce Peninsula and where we want to grow? So
So let's get back to Amendment 157. I think we've kicked this around pretty good today, and it's time to move on. So the recommendation that was made, that the amendment be refused, was voted on and turned down, so that motion was lost. So I'm going to ask one more time before we go on to the next item. Is Bruce County, is there a recommendation, a mover or a seconder for the recommendation that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved? Looking for a mover for that recommendation. Moved by Jay. Do we have a seconder? Second by Ann. Now we can have some discussion. So we have a mover and a seconder for the Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved. Now let's have a short discussion on that. Go ahead, Jay.
And I do see where the planners are coming from. I believe 157 is probably the safest thing. It designates the lands to allow development, but it still doesn't, I don't know, selling the farm is the right word, but it does bring us closer to a process. I would like to be all the way and letting the developer go tomorrow, but correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, does this still, it designates the land, but it still has another process to go through before we're there?
So with regard to this amendment, for 167, you keep in mind it adds the lands into the boundary and they're still designated as rural. If at any time in the future there was a proposal that these lands be built out, the rural designation permits existing uses. And if the lands were to be built out in terms of housing or commercial uses and so on, they would approach the local municipality and amend the local plan.
So that's all this is doing, is bringing the land and the same designation it already has into the village boundary, into the municipal boundary.
So it's like almost exactly is designated as rural currently in the county plan. It will be designated as rural in the local plan. Jack, can you please provide clarification if required?
The county plan amendment moves the line, and then from the county's perspective, it's part of the urban area. The local plan amendment would call the land rural within the local plan, and as Chris said, any future land use changes would be contemplated through amendment to the local plan.
Exactly. Jay, one more time.
So just to clarify, in the future, if I'm a developer coming to South Bruce Peninsula, I do not go to county and have anything to do with county for the process of what I'm going to be doing on the property. It is totally up to the Council of South Bruce Peninsula and our staff?
This is a very important question. Everything that you do is up to your county council. That involves a Planning Act approval. The Planning Act assigns the authority and responsibility to you in terms of how you designate your lands and when you expand your boundaries. And there's procedures or protocols that are standard that would allow for that process to happen. Some time ago, the county was delegated approval authority from the minister for local plan amendments. And so as a matter of routine, most amendments would be, the issues would be worked out at the local level, at the neighborhood level, and then they would come forward for approval or refusal to council. So in terms of the county's role or function, the local municipality is the one who has control of their local plan, and we're the approval body for any amendments to your local plan at the county level.
Sorry.
Okay, I have a mover and a seconder that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved.
One more question?
Why not?
Okay, just to clarify, so South Bruce Peninsula, what we're trying to propose is we want to be the proponents of our own fate, of what we move forward and do. If this proposal that's on the table still ties the hands of South Bruce Peninsula or a developer to, and I believe it is, has to go back through the county process to land designation and change, and is still going to end up being a 2 or 3 year process to get through it. I know it's 30 days to make the application, and it's another 30 days to get approval, but that doesn't ever seem to add up to the timelines that we see. we want to move forward as South Bruce Peninsula, so, and I can understand the county's concern because it's going to have to represent their decision probably at an OMB hearing on this. But I don't want to sit here and tell, let's say, Saugeen Shores that this is what you should be doing, because I don't know the best thing for Saugeen Shores, and I believe Saugeen Shores does, and I think every representative here. And your discussions are more in depth at your lower tier table on what you want to do for the future. So I'm hoping our hands aren't tied for the future of what we've doing and the monies we've invested, that developers are still not going to develop because we're still not ready for them with land designation.
Okay, I had a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I had a second.
So sorry, Paul, can I just ask one more question? So, but I think, as I understand it, it's one less hoop for you. I mean, the county still has certain controls, but if this is passed, it's one less hoop.
Kelly?
Is that right?
Right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say no, it's not one less hoop, because effectively, whoever ultimately is the developer, when they come back, they're going to have to go through another amendment. So typically when this happens, and why I think there's a little bit of anxiety on the part of staff with this application, is normally when the application is made by the town to expand their urban boundaries, they have a number of reports that are suggesting what that map is going to look like. What is before you today is there is no map. So you're potentially creating this, I'll call it a playground, and you haven't got any advice that's telling you what you're going to put in the playground. And why that's particularly challenging is it becomes a case where ultimately whoever presents to your council first is what it's going to become, which is just fundamentally not the best planning practice. So just for clarity, that's why there's a level of anxiety, is because it's effectively, you haven't you as a community have not designated what you want your community to look like. And usually that is part of the process, so that whoever's sitting in the decision-making chairs at the time when the application comes forward knows that it does align with what you want your community to look like.
Okay, we still got a motion on the floor to vote on, or the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 157 be approved. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? It's carried. Moving on to the second item today on the agenda. Where are we at, Chris?
So this is the second item. This is the local amendment. There's an amendment that's been approved by the local council. Prior to making that recommendation, our staff made a number of recommendations to the local council to try to resolve the majority of the issues. In the end, and provided options, and in the end, they passed the amendment. The staff report that you have is making a recommendation to this council in good faith as to whether or not that person can provide a professional opinion that this is good planning or in the public interest. And on the balance, the planners provided you with some options of just approve it as modified, or refused. And the preferred option coming from the planner, in this case, who's evaluated it, taken into consideration probably 20 or different things he would need to form an opinion, found on the balance that his recommendation to you as the approval body for the local amendment would be option number 2. This council is free to, again, approve it as adopted, to refuse it outright, or approve it as modified.
So where's the modified recommendation? Is that it there, Chris?
Yep. can you ask Jack to please explain the modified recommendation?
Jack, will you explain your modified recommendation, please?
The modified recommendation involves the adoption or the approval of a schedule change to the official plan. It takes lands out of the highway, commercial, and industrial designation, and it places them in the residential designation. And lands that coincide with the hazard distance from the adjacent propane facility remain in the highway, commercial, and industrial designations that are currently applied to those lands.
Thank you. Let's look at the wording of that recommendation. Can you find it there, Chris?
That South Bruce Peninsula Official Plan Amendment, OP number 30, be modified to reflect option number 2 as attached in Appendix A.
Do you have a mover for that motion? No mover. I won't make it easy. I won't require a seconder then. So, do we want to go back and look at the first recommendation? We're not going to go with option 2 today, apparently.
I would suggest if the panel is not willing to entertain an amendment to the amendment, I would suggest that therefore the next option you would go to would be refusal, or sorry, would be approval as opposed to refusal. If I'm
Through you, Mr. Chair, it does, again, the recommendation is that it be put on the floor by way of a mover and a seconder, and then if the desire is to not approve what's before you, then the vote stands, and whatever the selection is or the desire of committee is for step 2.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more time then for a mover and a seconder to get the recommendation on the floor so we can vote accordingly, that the South Bruce Peninsula Official Plan application number 30 be modified to reflect option 2 attached to Appendix A to this report. Do I have a mover for that motion? Moved by Jay, second by, thank you, Robert. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed to the motion? Discussion. Oh, discussion, go ahead, Jay. Only been at it an hour and a half.
So this is, I believe, an attempt and valiant attempt to try to mitigate Sparting Propane's situation of their blast zone. Am I correct in that saying?
I think option number 2 would accomplish that to some extent.
Yeah, so yes. This is option
2.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the motion? Right. No, the first time I never got a mover and a seconder, so we moved past it, and then Kelly's suggestion we should get a mover and a seconder and vote it down so that's in the record if you still want to go that route. Is that correct? Yeah. So we do have a mover and a second, so it's on the floor. Any discussion, Mike?
Used here. So what we're voting on is to approve what's outlined in Schedule A. Is that correct? The map on Schedule A that we have, which would be about, I don't know what page. Sorry. So I've got Schedule A, page 37. So is there an appendix that I'm missing? That's it. That is what we're voting on. So that's.
So what option was that? Jack, can you perhaps explain the schedule?
Begging apologies for it. Option 2 is Appendix 1, which is Schedule A to an amendment. I appreciate the confusion. So this is, it's called Schedule A because it would be to the text of an amendment. In this case, this is all there is. It's a schedule. It takes some lands, puts them into residential, and the lands close to Highway 6 that are also coincidental with the propane facility's hazard distance, stay highway, commercial, and industrial.
Okay, anything else?
So with option 1, 2, or 3, we're voting on option 2.
Correct. That's the motion that's on the floor at this time.
And,
Mike?
sorry, again, just for clarification, because I'm so many pages, I'm having trouble finding it. The description and what we're voting on will be a written description of what is reflected on that map. Is that correct?
Everyone clear? Semi clear? Whatever. That, so we got a mover and a seconder to approve option 2. Any other discussion? Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? That motion's locked. Okay, where do we go from here, Kelly? Chris?
Given my druthers, I would suggest that you would move to...
Deferral?
Well, no. I believe, from my perspective, your options are approval or refusal. The logical one at this point would be to ask for a motion for approval.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I wonder if I don't know what the timelines are and the workload is for the director and his staff, but whether or not there would be value in having a report come forward at the start of October that lays out the various elements of what ultimately we're trying to achieve, and that may give enough time for the developer to put forward a detailed plan that would make it a bit clearer in terms of the size of the development and what is exactly being proposed.
I'm 100% in favor of that, because even if it's October, November, December, January, it really doesn't matter, because today we're just going in circles and maybe not going to do what's best for that land. So, is anyone opposed to that approach today? Do we need a motion for that, Kelly? Mike? Motion to defer. Beautiful. Second by Milt. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? Unanimous. Okay. That takes us to item C on the agenda, the Municipality of Kincardine official plan. Who's, Chris, is that you?
I can do this one. This is amendment number 11, and there's only one option proposed in the report, and there's a recommendation that's similar to the previous file, a plan amendment within the Kincardine urban area, and the proposal is to redesignate it from resort to residential, simply a piece of surplus land that's no longer suitable for resort uses, and a proposal to build residential units on it. And the issues associated with the property, if any, have been dealt with at the local level. The evaluation in this report suggests that it meets all the objectives of the county plan, the local plan, and those objectives of the province as well. And so there's a recommendation that amendment number 11 to the Kincardine local official plan be approved.
Move, is that a move, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, moved by Mike, second by Milt. Any discussion on the motion?
We're simpler in Kincardine.
I didn't want to call you simple, Okay.
This is, sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna, so that's, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion? That motion's carried. Thank you. On to the next item, Chris.
This is item 3D, and this is a proposed severance. And as the committee is aware, consent approvals are routine, actually. Most of them are done at the staff level, and the county, we consult with the local municipality in terms of if there's anything they want to see, and then we work together to set the standard conditions for consent. And it's very rare you would get one. The delegation bylaw, however, says that if the Secretary Treasurer of the Land Division Committee decides that he chooses not to sign a deed or grant approval, then it can come back to the committee, and the Secretary Treasurer simply loses his powers and they're reassigned back to the committee. And we have a situation here where we have a bona fide farmer who's a qualified bona fide farmer and would like to sever off a surplus house. And we deal with these routinely. And the purpose of this report is to recommend approval, but with a modification. And the purpose of the modification is simply that in the county plan, the reference is to severance of the surplus farm dwelling. And there's sometimes the case where there's additional lands associated with the dwelling, and in many bona fide farmers now are, quite frankly, larger cash cropping operations, and they don't seem to have a broader interest in some of the lands that are around the actual outbuilding. And so if you look at the drawing that's currently on the screen, on the right you can see the farmhouse, and this is on Provincial Highway 9. You can see the location of the farmhouse, and then there's a hill basically that appears now to be rough pasture land, and on top of the hill there's a windbreak, so on and so forth. And then so when I evaluate these things, I would look at it and say, well, the idea is to get off the house. We're not really trying to create hobby farms. Sometimes there's yards associated with that or older outbuildings that need to come with it, and try to keep the agricultural land, although it may not suit the needs of the current person who's cash cropping it, keep those agricultural lands with the backland and the farm. So that's sort of consistent with their methodology. Of course, the proponent in this case arguing that because there's the hill and it's rough pasture, it's not suitable. You can see the type of farming going on actually on the backland, and some difficulties with getting larger equipment and so on onto this pasture on the hill, which is farmland but not very flat and obviously not tile drained or anything. So I think consistently our approach has been at a staff level, it's really talking about the house. The residence has become surplus. It's often the case that there's land that's maybe seen to be more marginal than what's preferred by the person purchasing the backland. But as a matter of protocol and process, it would be, in my opinion, that the farm field on the left, as you can see in the big triangle, should simply remain with the back farm, and the house should be severed off in the configuration as shown. So the recommendation is we approve it as modified. This drawing shows the modified drawing that would be a staff recommendation from the Secretary Treasurer of the Land Division Committee, and this would be a drawing of what the proponent would like to see. No other issues with it at all, other than a slight disagreement regarding the parcel size.
The recommendation is that the Bruce County Consent Application B481632, 34, for a surplus farm dwelling severance of plus or minus 72 hectare as modified and recommended by the Planning Department be approved versus the plus or minus 2.34 hectare severance as requested by the applicant, and the Director or Manager of Land Use Planning be authorized to prepare and sign the authorizing provisional consent documentations. Do I have a mover for that second motion? Moved by Ann, moved for that recommendation. Second by Wolf. Any discussion on the motion? Jay.
Just to clarify, the person that is in the house existing owns the farm and is the one that is doing the severance to sell the property to somebody.
So the owner is Lang Farms, and Lang Farms has a number of different holdings. Whether or not the Langs currently live in this house now, wouldn't be consequential, and I don't believe that they do. But so you could have 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 different holdings. He's a bona fide farmer, and whether he just bought this or lives on it, it doesn't really matter from the perspective of the policies. It's just that they get to be eligible to sever it off.
So whoever ends up with the back property would not ever use this hill in their farming operation as far as working the land or planting corn or beans or anything on it because it's too high to justify farm equipment being on it. But
yeah, so the rationale I think presented with the application is that given the type of farming that's now becoming common to the area, these lands would not typically be used in those types of operations. Our perspective would be more so the plan policies are trying to provide flexibility for all types of farming down the road, and down the road it may be viable as some other type of farming. So we prefer, it's never been a case really where the policies have promoted the creation of a small hobby farm at 7 acres as a farm, because the genesis of the policy to sever off the house as surplus.
So what I look at, though, is the use of that hill down the road, the farmhouse, the barn. Somebody who is going to purchase that property might have 2 horses that pasture on the hill. Whereas if it stays with the farm, it probably never will be used as farming again.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Lang would be very pleased to hear you say that. And that's, you know, one of the things we hear in the countryside is the need for hobby farms and the rest of it. But it was really, the policies were really more so, as opposed to creating a 7-acre hobby farm, was more so just to get the house off with the required amount of land that would make sense, so you could still live in the house and have a yard and tile bed area.
Okay, over to Dan, Mike, and then Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could speak to this in a little more detail, but at this point, I'd like to make a recommendation that we modify this motion and that we move it to the 2.78 hectare rather than what has been recommended by staff. 3.4 hectares.
Yeah, I think there's,
Mike?
just for clarification, I think in the recommendation it says 2.34 hectares, and then it says, there's confusion, it says 7.7 acres, which is incorrect. It should be 5.7 acres. That would be the conversion. I know if you look up further in the document, it refers to that, but 2.3 hectares is 5.78 acres. So
Yes.
there's
The motion that's on the floor is to approve the let's talk acres.
But
The motion that's on, I agree,
Go ahead,
Mike,
you
there's
go.
a typo there, right? Yeah, okay, so the motion that's on the floor is that we're approving this consent as a 1.79 acres versus the application of 5.7 acres.
Yes. And
That's the motion that's moved and seconded, correct?
Yes.
So if Dan, if you're not supporting that, then we got to get it turned down. Anything else, Dan?
well, can I make a motion to amend that
No.
motion to read the 5.7 acres?
Have a motion on the floor we'll have to vote on.
Okay. If I may, in that case, can I speak to this motion as it stands?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So when we take a look at this particular piece of property, as Councillor has indicated, there's not only a steep hill. I mean, there's a steep hill, there's a fence line, a tree line there for purpose. It really hasn't been farmed in generations. It has remained fallow. So it's not just a question of, current land usage. It hasn't been used. So it has no value to the existing farmer. It would have some value to a homeowner, and whether or not a 5-acre farm is a hobby farm or something more extensive. If you were to go to a 5-acre winery in the Niagara district, I don't think you would call that a hobby farm, generating millions of dollars a year. We haven't perhaps moved much into winemaking in this area, but perhaps there are other things that could be done. And I think our biggest concern within Brockton is that we have a number of acres here that we suggest are put in a situation of having no value to anyone. No value to the farmer, no value to the homeowner. And it certainly makes much more sense to us that it has value to the property owner or the homeowner. And I will spend more time looking into the provincial policy statement. I can't believe the provincial policy statement wants us to render land of having little or no value. Doesn't seem to be consistent with the provincial policy statement that wants planning organizations to promote economic development and quality of life in our rural areas.
Robert?
I kind of wish that there would have been a picture here for everyone to have seen, the picture taken from the highway to actually show, if you're standing on the highway, what this property looks like. The homeowner, or where the home's going to be, it would be of an asset to have this larger parcel. You could have maybe a horse or a cow. They will probably build a small shed or so forth, And it would be a hobby farm. They could have a garden and so forth. Like, I think that this parcel of land would be of a lot of value to the home part. It is definitely of no value to Mr. Lang, because the land beyond those trees is all flat, and there's no way the machinery would come down there. It right now is all growing up in weeds. It's a real eyesore. So I think if it became part of the home part, somebody would, you know, like have a garden, maybe a horse and develop it, and it wouldn't be such an eyesore.
Any other discussion on the recommendation? So the recommendation is to approve the smaller parcel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for clarity for committee members as to why a request for amendment couldn't be entertained with this recommendation, given it's a consent application, if it gets denied, then the committee would come back and request for the original change of application. Does that make sense? So because it's originating as a planning application, you can't make an amendment. If committee decide that the original application is what you wish to see approved, then you would vote it down and put on the table for a modified recommendation.
At the next meeting?
No.
Today? Okay, yep. So the recommendation that we're voting on now is that it moved and seconded that we're approving the smaller parcel, a modified version of the original application. Everyone clear on that? Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Motion's lost. So now we're looking for what recommendation, Kelly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what was presented, I believe, or requested rather, if Member Gierzak wishes to request.
Would you like to make a recommendation, Dan?
Yes. Recommendation that this be approved at the 5.7 acre level.
Do you have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Bob. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion? It's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. What about anything else, Chris? Other than adjournment we're hoping for, or what?
I think that's it from the planning department for today.
Well, that was certainly exciting today. We haven't had one of them for a while, so thank you, everyone, and hope Dave's enjoying himself in Ontario, wherever he is. Dave? It's 11:45. Are we moving on to highways, Kelly? Are we having lunch? What's your recommendation? I think highways, there's nothing huge, but I think it's a little bit more than 15 minutes. What do you want to do?
The only thing I would say, Mr. Chair, is the county engineer is in attendance in the building, and I'm not sure what his endurance is in terms of staying in the building for another hour. He wished to present the reports to committee. So it's...
Let's accommodate Brian and move on, and because I really think by looking at the agenda,